According to the NBC poll, Donald Trump achieved his highest approval rating he's ever had either time that he has been president. You wouldn't believe that from the headlines. And the Democrat Party, well, it turns out that pretty much nobody can stand them. Here's NBC pollster Steve Kornacki.
Look at this number for the Democratic Party right now. Just 27% positive, 55% negative. That's a gap of 28 points.
Rich, what was really going on in 2024? Because you and I were on here every day. We were talking about this phenomenon that you had originally identified. We talked about the low prop voters, these people who don't usually vote in many elections, but you talked about the phenomenon of the no prop voter. This is a phrase you coined, and you said these are just people who have never voted either because they're young or because they've just never been involved in the political process before. But you correctly identified that Donald Trump was switching them on, and that they were more likely to vote for Trump. They're not exactly as conservative as your sort of core Republican voter. They're not for Republicans at all. They were pro-Trump. And this is something that the media all of a sudden is acting like it's this huge revelation. And I've seen people, going on MSNBC now saying, "Oh my gosh, we've uncovered some incredible secret that Donald Trump is more popular than ever. And if more people had voted, his numbers would have only gone up." And I'm like, guys, we talked about it literally every single day for like 40 weeks straight when we had Rich Barris on explaining this over and over and over, and you guys just didn't listen because you were wrong and we were right. Rich, what was the true story of 2024, and how is it that these people who are acting like they magically just found out have always been completely in the dark?
Yeah, ultimately, this was a result of the realignment, and it had massive implications on the coalition and the outcome of the vote. And we first identified the no prop voter when we began to really study in greater detail than others were even bothering to try the Trump or bust voter. Right? As somebody who comes out and votes for Donald Trump, or would if you could get them to the ballot box, but they will never vote for anybody else. They're not going to vote for Nikki Haley. They're not going to vote for Ron DeSantis. And they lean to the right, but most of them will say that they're moderates. And by the way, 24 was very moderate, the electorate. It was, as a percentage of the electorate, it usually would be that share would represent a Republican loss. But because of these no prop voters actually coming out for the first time, Trump was able to utilize them to win the election. Years ago, USA Today used to do a survey, and it was called the Unlikely Voter Survey. People understood that number did matter and had predictive value, but it was a massive implication of the realignment because many years ago, and my entire career, those voters were Democratic voters because the Democratic Party was the party of the working man and woman and the average working man and woman. And they don't vote at the rate that educated voters and politicos vote. So we identified them, seeing them in that Trump or bust number. And it was a very significant number. All right, we would ask them to, if you could vote, if you were going to vote, who would you vote for? And it was only Donald Trump. So what does that mean? The likely voter sample in polling is now more Democratic than the registered voter sample, and the adult sample is now more Trumpy than either the register or likely. It means that Trump, especially Trump, I mean, it's really not a Republican vote. It is a Trump vote. He had an enormous opportunity to go out and get these people, and if he did, he would change the electorate. He would make pollsters look like fools, and that's exactly what happened. But now, 2 years later, we see people, like you said, on MSNBC. Harry Enton from CNN does a segment, and they're acting as if they've made this novel discovery, Jack. Like this hasn't been going on for a very long time. And in fact, we saw it from the very beginning of the Trump movement. Trump got people out in 2016 that had not voted since Bill Clinton. They're not just necessarily young voters. Some of these people, especially in the Midwest, middle-aged, to just about to be in the senior, they're 45 to 64. That age group, that was an extremely Trumpy voter. And they either had no vote history at all, or they did not have a vote history within the last 4 cycles, which is why we use the term like 1 out of 4 voter. They've only voted in 1 out of the last 4 elections. And this is one of the biggest findings of the 2024 election, along with, of course, the change in vote preference for a Republican candidate among people of color, among younger voters. So, I mean, there are studies being done now, and we're all going to see them very soon. I've seen several of them. We always wait for these post-election autopsies. It looks like Trump won in several states. He won some of the young non-white vote. It's just incredible. It's just a remarkable outcome. But you would not have been surprised if you did follow the public polling project that we conduct, or you follow Big Data Poll or People's Pundit, or you watch Jack Posobiec. And, we were talking about it on one of our segments. So when you watch these people now act as if this came out of the blue and, it's a big revelation, it wasn't. Anyone who was really paying attention, doing an honest job and being honest with people would have been able to see this and identify it. You should have been.
We talked about class realignment over and over and over. We talked about how it was being done on economic lines which cut across ethnic lines. That's why you saw the big swing, particularly with African American men. And we talked about the fact that the Democrats saw it too. That's why they put Barack Obama out there, to have him start scolding African American men. Remember, come on, brothers, we gotta help our sister out. Remember that? Come on, it was the most cringe thing I've ever seen. I was at the DNC when Barack Obama spoke. I remember this. I was in the room when he gave the speech. We infiltrated the whole thing, and we were in there. And I was like, this guy's seen the numbers. We used to have this joke. It was Kamala's internals, right? But Kamala's internals were basically our externals on this side of the football, because we were just telling the truth all along, and her internals were exactly the same. That's how you could tell their actions. Or these jokes about, like, well, she's up big, or they were trying to say she's up big in Florida. Why did she go to Florida then? Why didn't she go into Florida? If she's up in all these areas, why isn't if she was so up in Iowa, why didn't Tim Walz go to Iowa when he is the governor of the neighboring state? Again, there was basic things that we could do to fact check the numbers and point out that their actions only made sense if you saw them through the lens of what we were talking about, because internally they were not lying. Internally they were telling the truth. And that's why you didn't even see a big freak out from the Democrat establishment when Trump won, because they knew he was going to win the whole time.
And on the flip side of that, there was the other lie, which is that there was going to be a massive blowback. That maybe even if this is happening, that people like the People's Pundit and others are saying, even if he's really doing better with younger voters, with non-white voters, it doesn't matter, because there's going to be this massive revolt, this massive defection of white Republican women, especially educated white Republican women in the suburbs. And that was the other side of that lie. And you had people like Dave Wasserman on Twitter, he said the day before the election, we'll know immediately when we see New Jersey, because we're going to see Monmouth County come in. And I know you know this area of New Jersey, and Monmouth County will tell us, because there's a ton of white Republican women there, and he didn't do well with them last time, and blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, Donald Trump obviously expanded his advantage in Monmouth County and flipped counties like Morris, because none of that happened. You could go through upper and lower Buckingham, 1, 2 in Bucks County, and you can see that these are very educated areas. By the way, there's you have lower 1, which is more working class, lower 2, which is more educated. The head of Merck lives over there, guys. I mean, that's the kind of area it is. Donald Trump not only improved his performance in those areas, he won them both. So he was winning the working class.
We were some of the only people. We were some of the only people who pointed out that Trump was going to do better with suburban white women.
Yes.
We talked about the impact of the trans in women's sports. This was a huge issue there. We talked about, I wrote a whole op-ed about the migrant violence, the MS-13, the Laken Rileys, all of that. And of course, it can't be denied, the MAGA movement. The MAGA movement is probably, and I'm just going to say it, right, is probably the most popular political movement in all of America today. MAGA is more popular than MAGA. And I say that as like a card-carrying, MAGA guy. It's just true. It's insanely popular. So the idea that the Democrats could run against this entire constellation of things, they just don't understand. And Trump understands this. He intrinsically understands that this is where the country was at. That's why he steered where he was. That's why he put together the coalition the way that he did. And that's why he got the results that he did.